So how you feeling?
Not like singing or karaoke. Yeah, good.
Thank you for taking the time. I know you're busy. And
Of course, my pleasure, Derek.
this is a passion project, and I love what you're doing. And there's so many things that I really want to ask you about your project. I noticed that I looked at your LinkedIn resume, and I noticed that you have pretty much always done game farm, or you've done stuff with nature since you've been a kid, right?
My whole life.
Your whole life.
Yeah.
So this has been really something that you've always done, and I admire that because I've bounced around. I've had 40 jobs in my life, and I've done everything under the sun, and from acting, gas station, teaching, and I just find it fascinating that you found this thing that you were passionate about, and you've just stayed with it in every sort of position you've taken, every job. It's always been about, I guess, nature and animals, right?
Well, it started out very directly with nature and animals, but it's obviously matured and evolved into sustainability or responsibility for the planet.
Did you have an event, or just how did that come about?
It started, I guess, when I was born, really. My grandfather retired a few years after I was born, and I was the first grandson. And he took me camping and fishing, bird watching, and eventually led to hunting. And when I was 13, I remember we took a trip up country in South Africa. This was my first real hunting experience that I went on with him, like proper hunting. And I wasn't hunting; I was just accompanying him. Mm-hmm. And we went to this huge game farm where this couple, the owner only had one arm because it'd been ripped off by a lion.
Damn.
And, he was looking after. He was the owner of the farm, and had this German couple there for 10 days hunting and staying there in the lodge. And so we stayed with them. We ate with them. We went out with them. Really, obviously left a huge impression on me, because when we were driving back, I said to my grandfather that I want to be a game farmer when I grow up. So from that day onwards, he started introducing me to environmental conservation, nature conservation officials at nature reserves. He took me to nature reserves specifically, introduced me to game farmers, and I got a better understanding of what it would involve. And before I left school, I had made up my mind to study nature conservation, which ultimately is just about resource conservation and understanding what animals need and habitat protection. And also understanding that it's important to have these spaces not only for the ecosystem services, but for people to come and enjoy nature so they can learn to appreciate it and then start protecting it ultimately. Right?
I want to go back to the arm ripped off for a second because, wait, how old were you?
13.
Okay. 13 years old. I guess you're kind of a tough guy, but you're still a kid, a teenager, and you see a guy's arm ripped off from a lion, and you're not like a little bit scared to go into this profession now?
No. You see, so actually, it was midwinter. So when we arrived, it was dark, and the next morning, we were woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning by this lion roaring outside our window. So of course, it was the first experience for me of that nature. Is a lion roaring outside my bedroom window, and we looked out, and the house was adjacent to a lion pen. This huge cage, well, not cage, but an enclosure with a few lions in. So obviously they were lion breeders, and that's how it had happened. He'd been feeding the lions once and they got ripped off. But being a South African and being exposed to all these weird and wonderful experiences and episodes, you kind of get used to it.
Okay. Was that your first time, seeing this kind of wild nature animal kingdom in South Africa, or no?
No. That's
okay.
That's something that was introduced to me from the beginning.
But you say that event with your grandfather was the one that sort of flipped the switch in your head?
It flipped the switch towards game farming, which ultimately led me to study what I wanted to study. I mean, I guess I would have studied nature conservation regardless of wanting to become a game farmer. Why it flipped the switch is I could see the role that protecting the environment and in such a way that it could generate revenue
Really?
was what made it click for me.
Because that was a paid visit you guys took, or?
No, we were there for free because we knew the owner, and my grandfather knew the owner. But the Germans that were staying there at the time, the German couple were hunting, and they were paying thousands of dollars to stay there and to hunt. And the money was going into the farm, of course, which enabled the farmer to protect a large piece of land and all its species. And to be able to have a healthy population of wildlife, you need to balance the vegetation, the ecosystem. So you have to understand all of that. So protecting the environment is great. We need wilderness areas, but to protect it, some parts at least, for commercial gain is also very important. If there isn't a value, why protect it? At least a financial value.
So you saw that. That was a pretty young age to have that business mind of noticing that it takes also revenue to keep these things going. Did someone tell you that, or you just realized that, or?
I guess it just made sense at the time that, yeah, sure, you can work on a nature reserve that's maybe a government job and protect an amazing piece of property, but ultimately that property needs to generate revenue. It can either be through gate takings, which is minimal, or it can be through large hunting expeditions that pay a lot of money. And it just made sense. The more money it can make, the better you can protect it.
Yeah, there's so much I want to talk to you about, but this is interesting now. The game farming thing, to me, it seems like it's a touchy issue, right? Because what can you kill or not kill? And I mean, they're hunting these animals, right? But some are not extinct. What's the
endangered?
Endangered, right?
Yeah, or threatened.
So how do you ethically balance that? Like, let them kill these animals, but also we need the money to sustain it to kill these animals, right? How does that work?
Look, obviously all animals have varying degrees of status on the vulnerability list, or what they call the endangered species list, from least concern to extinct, right? And they get evaluated regularly. So animals that have a lower ranking on that obviously aren't necessarily on the CITES list of endangered species or protected, and you can hunt them with a normal hunting permit. Animals breed all the time if they're in the right environment. So it's all about providing them with that very stable or relatively stable environment with what they need: space, food, shelter. And you manage the population in such a way that you take off the excess, but keep a healthy population to breed, and the genetically healthy as well, not just physically.
So there's a science to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're not hunting the endangered species. But if you are hunting an endangered species or a threatened species, there would be very specific permits required. And the money gained from that would need to then go back into the conservation of that species. However, recently there's been a lot of it's quite a hot topic.
That's interesting. So you found this passion. I envy you, man, because you found that really early, and you haven't really strayed from that. From what I can see, what I know of you and your CV and all that, you just this is my thing. This is what I'm going for, and this is what I'm going to do.
It was never a question for me.
That's incredible, and it's kind of nice to have that clarity. And you never thought like, I want to go and be like an actor or something else.
Yeah, I was playing with being an architect at some point, but that was very early on. But yeah, that never happened.
So then you get your conservation degree in university?
Yeah, so I got a diploma, a national diploma in environmental conservation or nature conservation.
And that's in South Africa?
In South Africa.
Okay, and then what I want to talk about is the expat experience, right? Because it seems to me that South Africa is the place if you want to do this kind of work. And you chose to go drive Dune Crasher in Dubai, right? As your first job. So what made you take that jump from South Africa, your home, to another place?
Well, it wasn't actually my first job. Yeah, my first job was actually a waiter in a restaurant.
Wait, here in Dubai?
No, in South Africa. Okay. I left South Africa in 2005. And I started my first job in 1996 as a game farm manager. That was my real proper first job.
In South Africa?
In South Africa.
Right.
And I worked on that game farm for 7 years, where we took a semi-wildlife and cattle ranch, 300 or 400 head of cattle, and a couple of thousand head of wildlife, and converted it after the first year into a wildlife-only protected area that allowed hunting.
Huh.
We brought in overseas clients to hunt. We managed the population of wildlife. We brought in rhino and buffalo, not for hunting purposes though. Increased the population of giraffe. So we shifted the whole experience from being semi-cattle, wildlife and local hunting to international hunting and more of a conservation project than before. Yeah, so just to go back a step, part of my salary at that time was half a gazelle. So we were 5 laborers and myself running the property, and I could shoot 3 gazelle a month.
Shoot them?
Yeah.
And then what
that was part of our salary, part of our package to eat, obviously.
Really?
Yeah, that was...
And so that was, but then could you sell them for money?
No, that was, we didn't want, I mean, the price of meat it's so cheap.
Uh-huh.
But it was part of it was our meal, you know?
Is that all you ate?
No, of course not.
What did you guys eat?
Yeah.
Were there shops?
No, of course.
Did you have stores?
Yeah, for sure. The closest store was about 25 kilometers away.
Was it Spinneys or something?
No.
What do you guys have?
It was a small garage supermarket and like a cooperative. The town had 1 post office, 5 bars, 4 churches, 3 petrol stations, you know. That's it.
Is this near Cape Town? Where is this?
No,
looking?
right up in the north of South Africa, on the border between Zimbabwe and Botswana.
Okay.
In South Africa.
Well, that's far.
Yeah, it was 2,000 kilometers north of where I grew up.
So is South Africa, when I went there once for a game reserve trip, it was 10 days. At that time, the year 2000. And everyone said, don't get out of your car in Joburg. I heard horror stories and things. Is it that dangerous? Is it select areas? And
it's really select areas, like anywhere in the world.
Okay.
I mean, where the game farm is one of the safest places you can ever imagine. So remote.
I mean, I always heard stories of people, don't stop at a red light. You're going to get mugged and killed. That's just certain locations?
Very select areas.
It's like the subway in New York.
Coming back to why I came here. So I guess it's an interesting story. After about 7 years of working on the game farm. Thanks
for taking me back, by the way.
Yeah.
No, I'm interested. Go ahead.
Yeah. So 7 years of working on the game farm. One of the owner's friends was traveling around South Africa in a camper van and a dog, writing a book on alternative healing. And so I got a cryptic message on my phone one day saying this lady would be rocking up at the gate around about this date. She will be staying in her camper van on the farm. Just welcome her in. I wasn't on the farm at the time when she did arrive, so one afternoon I got back from the cooperative doing some shopping and getting some supplies, and there was this crazy orange-haired, I think 65-year-old short lady and a little dog got out of a camper van and landed up staying there for a month. And that's what I guess led me to come to the UAE, because that experience introduced me to seeking a different spiritual lifestyle. I went from being a hardcore hunting, meat-eating South African to being a vegan within 3 months after that.
Wow.
I quit my job without knowing what I was going to do.
Whoa.
And I moved down south to Cape Town to spend time with my father working on a community farm called Camp Hill Village, where I volunteered for a couple of months. So I literally took a huge leap from where I was, very grounded, having what everybody called a dream job, which was a dream job, to being, I wouldn't say unsure of where I was going, but allowing myself the space and the universe, I guess, the space for us to connect and to draw me to the next stage.
How old were you then?
27.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did this woman teach you, or what was her energy?
Yeah, that's another podcast.
Okay.
But basically, I was curious as to how she was approaching, she was very calm and grounded. She was 100% vegan.
Uh-huh.
And one evening we were sitting around the table, mosquitoes buzzing around and sunset, classical African bush sunset. And she asked me what about the background of my parents and grandparents, spiritual background. I mentioned my grandmother, Methodist, my father, and my one grandfather is a Satsangi. And that's when her ears peaked up. She's like, that's very interesting. She, at that time, I didn't know. She didn't actually say it. He's also a Satsangi, which is a North Indian faith called Santmat. And my grandfather on my father's side practicing Santmat for many years of his life.
Is that something that's specific to South Africa?
No.
The North Indian from where?
Punjab.
Oh, okay. This woman was Indian.
No.
Okay. So you
Jewish.
Jewish from South Africa?
A South African Jew, Satsangi.
Wow. So you have some Indian heritage then?
Mm-mm.
No.
No.
It's just a tribe.
Being a Satsangi can be any religion, any race.
It's just a religion.
It's not actually. It's just more of a science.
Okay.
More of a faith. But it's a spiritual search,
Satsangi.
And you follow a living master.
How do you spell that?
S-A-T.
S-A-T.
S-A-N-G-I. Or you are a Satsangi if you practice the faith of Santmat, which is S-A-N-T-M-A-T.
So that's a saint.
Santmat.
Santmat is not a saint?
I don't know the origin of Santmat, but...
So we can link that later if people are interested. So was that like Buddhism, where you follow a belief, or is it different?
Yeah, you follow a belief, but you're following a living master as opposed to a dead master.
Okay.
So the living master is the spirit of the master is reincarnated into a living being.
Mm-hmm. And is it always one master?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you consider yourself now a Santmat?
No, I'm not a Satsangi.
Satsangi.
No. I was seeking for a year and a bit, and then I came to the UAE, and that's actually when I was in that period when I came to the UAE, but I never. Okay. But that's what led me into this.
Gotcha. And then when you got here, you said, "Forget that stuff."
No, I wouldn't say I just dropped it immediately. So I was overall, I guess, a vegan for about 4 years. 3 of those years was here in the UAE at the time.
So is your grandfather still around?
Not that grandfather, no.
Okay.
But my grandfather that introduced me to wildlife, nature, yes. He's turning 89 this year.
Good for him. And is he still farming and stuff?
Well, he wasn't actually a farmer. He was a policeman, a retired brigadier. But he's still, I don't think he goes out hunting pigeons anymore, but he still takes his dogs out into the fields.
Cool.
Yeah. Bird watching.
Well, there's fascinating stuff in your life. If I'm saying this correctly, it's you felt the need to make a move, but you didn't know where. That's right?
100%. I actually felt I needed to get out of the country because having followed the South African and been caught up in the South African way, being a South African, I guess that's natural. And starting to seek a different spiritual energy, I realized I was probably quite limited in South Africa. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I went through this phase where taking from what I had known and learned, practiced for many years, and trying to apply it in a commercial way, I was thinking, I actually had worked out the business model, how to create very specific articles from animal hides, unique designer, let's call it rugs or mats, from the industry that not specifically going out to hunt them, but utilizing them from the hunting industry, because hunters would look for a lot of the horns, sometimes the capes. The meat obviously gets used, but a lot of the skins get wasted. So I was looking at taking that and turning it into a product, very like a custom product. So not a mass, but becoming a vegan, following spiritual belief caused a lot of internal conflict. And when I realized that it was becoming physically manifested, I decided that wasn't my path. And then I didn't know what to do.
Physically manifested in you?
Yeah.
Did you feel sick or something? Or?
I was getting, I can't remember what they call it, but half my body was covered in these shingles.
Yeah. And that was probably, you think from
I don't think I know.
From
because
the food you were eating or the thoughts you were having?
I was seeking a higher spiritual energy.
Yeah.
Away from killing animals, and bringing that energy down by eating, killing and eating. So I was a vegan, but at the same time I was seeking to orientate my income around the death of animals. Mm-hmm. And when I went to go see a naturopath, and I just explained that to him in, I guess, simpler words, for my understanding at the time, he looked at me and said, I guess you just realized why you have what you have. And from that minute onwards, shingles, not that minute, but the next couple of days, shingles disappeared. I didn't take any treatment, no homeopathic method, nothing. They disappeared, and I carried on working with my grandfather in his workshop because he was, as a hobby, a cabinet maker. And yeah, that's what I did for a couple of months. But I did have one person outside of South Africa that I reached out to, my uncle living in Dubai at the time. Dropped him an email, said, I've quit my job. I'm willing to work in a camera shop in Dubai, right, sweeping the floors. I just want to get out of the country and just allow things to develop from there. And he said, you're mad to quit your dream job.
Yeah.
But also sweeping floors in a camera shop in Dubai is not going to get you anywhere. Check out this link, which was then Emirates Group Careers. Uh-huh. There's a guiding position available at Al Maha Desert Resort and Spa in the Dubai Desert Conservation Reserve. One thing led to another, and applied, got the job, and started working in 2005 as a field guide, taking our tourists through the dunes.
I noticed you had a 100% accident-free record. Mm-hmm. Are there a lot of accidents on dune driving?
I didn't have a 100% accident-free record. I did.
Oh, you had a few?
I had one.
Okay.
Yeah. With Richard Branson in the car.
Are you serious? No way.
I'm not kidding.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
All right, you have to tell us that story then. You had Richard Branson on the dunes in Dubai?
Yeah.
Wow. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, the dune drive was uneventful. It's just a normal dune drive. But when we were driving out to see the wildlife, one of the guides was coming in on another road. And he thought he was a bit of a wild character. He thought I was playing chicken with him by driving on his side of the road. Mm-hmm. But meanwhile, we were all looking at the wildlife on the left, and my car had veered off. And he accelerated. And when he realized we weren't even looking at him, he then veered, and just the side view mirrors hit it.
Oh, you didn't topple over or anything? Oh, damn. No. That would have been crazy.
No,
so did you get to chat with him, driving him around?
Yeah, of course.
Such a cool guy, right?
As guides, we obviously didn't try and dig into our clients' lives. We were there to, interpret the environment for them and entertain them. So,
yeah. There's a few people though that I would probably geek out over, and he's one of them. The man's incredible. Like, bought his own island, swims around his island. Like, his story is incredible, and he just seems like such a down-to-earth guy.
Yeah, completely. Him and his brother and his son, brother's son were there, and it was very relaxing. We just enjoyed wildlife.
Wow. So did you have anyone else famous in your dune buggy?
So, the first guest I had, I think within the first 2 weeks of being allowed to take guests out, because you have to go through this trial phase.
I'm sorry, I call it a dune buggy, by the way. It's not a dune buggy.
Yeah, no, it's a four-wheel drive Land Cruiser.
Man, that's hilarious.
I remember, I'm not much for watching television, but at the time, my first guests that I really remember was Tamsin Outwaite, she was a soap opera star at the time in the British soap opera series, which I don't know the name of. A couple of shakes.
Yeah, so that job was, did you enjoy that job, driving?
Yes. The driving part was a skill that we all had to learn. None of us had ever done dune driving before, so that was a challenge. I love a challenge. Anything new, I'll tackle it. Jump in the deep end. And I'd like to perfect things, So doing it accident-free, getting stuck as little as possible. Yeah. Pushing extremes as much as you can. We really did extreme driving when we weren't being observed, to be honest. Yeah. We all like to do that. We learned how to do falconry. So we each got our own falcon, how to train falcons, fly falcons.
Oh, that's cool.
We learned how to do archery, camel riding. Most of us knew how to do horse riding already. So each of the guides was responsible for their own guests, So we were really expected to know all the skills and interpret the environment. And I think that was the part I enjoyed the most, was being able to utilize all these skills, but still give somebody an experience within nature that helps them take something out of nature and really walk away with this profound appreciation for the desert, because the desert is often seen as this dead environment, desolate, nothing growing, but they walk away blown away.
Would you say that, so you walked away from, using animals for food and money by killing them, and you came to do this job in the desert. Did you feel at that moment that I found what I was looking for on the search?
I've always known what I was looking for ultimately.
So you knew even then that wasn't it?
I've always been doing what I felt was the right thing. I never, even in the gap in between, when I left South Africa and came to the UAE, I wasn't seeking, actually. I was following. Even leading up to getting a job, I always felt that I was on the right path.
How did you feel that? Was it something inside? Did you get signs? Did you pray?
No, I didn't pray. And yes, signs always come.
Like what?
Always. I mean,
symbols?
It comes in so many different shapes and forms and times and means. That's like an interview or driving somewhere. It just really depends on. You have to open yourself up to receiving it, but you also can't allow yourself just to be bombarded by all the so-called signals, and wonder which one means what and which one should you follow. You have to have some kind of internal compass, that allows you to know which ones and to ask for what you want. Ultimately, as you go out to get something, you go and get it regardless, and you allow the signs to give you the confidence to continue following and to have this perseverance to get to that stage.
So how do you do that? I guess by having the strong internal compass is what you're saying. And for you, you knew it was always what you wanted to do was what?
Yeah. I guess look after Mother Earth the way she looks after us.
That's great.
And the best way to do that for me was to learn about Mother Earth. And as I've matured, learn how to expose more people to the beauty of nature and how they can apply or access this contribution that they can make, because everybody does care about the planet in some form or another. But a lot of people feel that they don't maybe know how to contribute, or any contribution they make might not have any effect. So that's basically, I feel, why I've been doing what I'm doing is more so that more people can really love nature and learn how to protect her, live with her instead of against her.
And so now what, the way that's manifesting in your life, that mantra is beautiful, by the way. Thank you. That's awesome. And that's come through this company that you founded called Terra Loop. Is it Terra Loop Life, or that's just the...
No, it's Terra Loop, but it's .life.
Because I was looking up Terra Loop, and there's another terraloop.org that's a battery, right? That's not you. I was like, I don't think this is him.
No.
But so you created TerraLoop.life after working in Dubai. You worked at Banyan Tree and created a bunch of stuff there. Anything you want to talk about at that job as director of the nature? Was it nature conservation?
Yeah, I was director of the nature reserve and the recreation. So after working for 4 years for the Al Maha Desert Resort and Spa and the Dubai Desert Conservation Reserve in combination, I went to Ras Al Khaimah to set up a nature reserve under the Banyan Tree Resort banner, or Banyan Tree Hotels. And setting up the nature reserve involved bringing in wildlife, indigenous wildlife, back into Ras Al Khaimah and activating the hospitality component, or merging the environmental and the hospitality component by creating all these nature-orientated activities, archery, nature walks, bike rides, horse rides, camel rides, whatever, falconry. So setting that up and bringing it from, literally a piece of sand and some villas to a nature reserve where people can really enjoy the wildlife or nature, took pretty much 5 years, let's say. And then the last 2 years was more fine-tuning the corporate social responsibility component of it and tying it in with more of the Russell Khmer scene rather than just focusing on the resort. So I did a lot of out of the box work as well with the government. And so that's what led, I'm not a hotelier. I never studied it, never practiced it really. I was exposed to it, and being in a country where there's very large disposable income, obviously tourism is a big component of of this country, but being on the extreme point where you've got luxury tourism in a nature reserve with a 5-star resort with only 101 villas, and noticing, whether it's directly or indirectly, the lack of respect for resources by the hospitality industry made me very aware of the opportunity, for the commercial opportunity and the environmental conservation opportunity. And that's when I quit my job after 7 years. Did about 2 years of due diligence on where I was going to go. My passion being, aside from nature, growing food, obviously eating, respecting food as a resource, noticing how much food was being wasted, and that even food that is not consumed and cannot be consumed, can still be a resource, compost for argument's sake. So looking at that gap in the industry led me to quit my job and open Terra Loop as an environmental consultancy, focusing on reducing food losses and food waste.
So even in that moment, you would say, I like what you said about feeling like even though it's not what you want to do, you still felt like you were on the path. And even though you're in that situation where you noticed all of this waste, you still felt like that you were on the path. You were still following and not searching, right? Would you say? And you were still living within this mantra of looking after Mother Earth as she would look after you.
Yeah, for sure.
And part of your tagline in Terra Loop, you have 3 things. You have compassion, curiosity, and dissatisfaction with the status quo.
Oh, yeah.
So that last one seems to me that's the dissatisfaction with the status quo. But instead of just being angry and pissed, you said, I'm going to make a change. Because me, I just get angry. And I told you, I think when we met, like, I see people with Starbucks iced coffees sitting down in Starbucks with the plastic, and I want to punch it out of their hands. But I can't do that, And then how many Starbucks are there? So I just get angry, and what you were talking about before resonated, because I'll shut down, feel like the little that I do is not enough. I have this reusable thing, I don't know where it is, this reusable clean canteen, and I feel like that just, it's not enough, I'm 90% vegan, and I feel like it's not enough. When I see all of this stuff going on, I get overwhelmed, I shut down, and I just say, like, screw it, let me get a yellow plastic bag from Spinneys. Doesn't matter, And that's why I find someone like you inspiring, because you say, no, actually, there's opportunity. You can change. You can do these things, and you're doing it. And how do you not get overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of this problem of food waste and waste in general?
I'm in it for the long run, for sure. And all change does take, meaningful change at least takes time. And I think you've got to reflect on that for, within yourself. How long does it take to change? Let's say if you want to become fit, it doesn't take overnight, right? So if you can appreciate that it takes time and pace yourself, just reflect. So live the way, be the change, right? So walk the talk, tread responsibly, continue with that, believe in what, stick to what you believe in, and apply that so that other people can see that change. And it's inevitable that people will start changing, and you've got to put things into place that allow people to change.
Options.
Yeah, you got to provide, you got to make it accessible. And if it isn't working, then those options aren't the right options. So I don't get overwhelmed. I don't think I'd like to go right back. And I was raised with, I think, a drip in my arm of positivity, right? Although my blood type is B negative, which is ironic. I'm very positive, persistent, actually beyond to reason sometimes. But I believe that there is a way through whatever state you're in, right? Whether it's the planet or yourself, or anything in between. So, yeah, I don't look at it as an overwhelming issue. I think of it as an opportunity to direct energy towards change.
Where does that come from, you think? Is it growing up where you grew up? Is it your family? Your mother? She was that way.
Yeah, anything, there was never something that wasn't dramatically negative. Anything that happened was, okay, well, that cup broke, or that plant died, unfortunately. What did you do wrong? Obviously, you didn't water it, or you put it in the wrong place, or whatever. Or it's you just deal with the situation the best way you can, rather than making it an issue, and see how you can improve your approach so that it doesn't weigh you down. So that you're always looking at better ways of doing things. I've always been inspired by my grandfather, my mother, my father. So everybody's inspired me to do things, whether it's teaching me how to make jewelry or knives, or go fishing or camping or hunting or whatever it is, or grow plants. There's always been this uplifting, educational, inspirational component in my life, which is positive. And energy is creative, right?
Yeah.
And you get two kinds of creative. You get positive and negative. And ultimately, you just decide where you want to place it. And it's in the positive, whether it's mental or physical energy, whatever kind of energy, spiritual.
Do you think that's connected to your connection with nature in a way?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because nature is like that.
Yeah. Although there's one of the sayings that I love to quote from my grandfather is everything in moderation, right? So even positive energy. So
you need
the
a balance.
yin-yang chaos. Yeah, it's...
I just listened to a podcast on the way down of this Dharma seed I listened to, and it was a podcast on equanimity, which is balance. And it's one of the Brahma Viharas, they call them. So it's one of the 4, I think there's 4 of them. But it's important to have equanimity, and to realize that those challenges and the negative ones, there's this thing where you just say, it's like this sometimes. That's kind of what you were saying. It's like this sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm pissed off today. It's like this sometimes. And that's helpful, I think, and it goes along with what you were saying. So tell me about this now, jump to Terra Loop. Tell me what you guys are doing and how you're channeling this positive optimism that you have into really impacting change in the UAE.
Yeah, impacting change in the UAE, that's a tall order. Fortunately, we're not solely responsible. I'm not solely responsible for that. There is a lot of momentum in the country on the environmental change level. But Terra Loop basically started out to help to understand the problem and then advise solutions to make the change. So food waste has to be generated because of some reason, right? So we go and do an audit, food waste audit for 7 days in a hotel, for example. We will understand the volume of food waste being generated over those 7 days, why it was generated, where it was generated, which kitchen, whether it's plate waste, trimming waste, prepared, not served, you name it, expired. We tie it to the occupancy of the hotel for those 7 days. Allows us to extrapolate the data. We then have this snapshot of what's happening with regards to food waste and why. And then we can look at the budget of the hotel, the operational requirements, and apply a solution that can help them track, reduce, convert, rework, whatever it is, and ultimately bring down their food cost, their total waste, their carbon footprint. And that's where we started, right? And we very soon realized that although there are loads of hotels in the country and there's a lot of opportunity, the food service sector is much bigger than just hotels.
Yeah.
Homeowners, residential contribution towards food waste is a huge fraction of the food waste stream.
I want to ask you about homeowners too, because we talked about that before. Were the hotels receptive to this proposal of an audit?
Yeah, of course. They're very receptive to having an audit done, receiving solutions, but it's not a line in their budgets currently, or hadn't been a line in their budgets. Hotels, like most businesses, obviously operate on a very tight budgets, very specific lines within their budgets, and to put a new line in the budget requires time. Usually through a CapEx process initially, and then it becomes OpEx 1 or 2 years later. So getting it in, the company's now, in June, will be 3 years old. Getting it to that point where hotels are ringing us up to say, hey, yes, please come do an audit and advise on solutions. We're not there yet. We still have to, fight the good fight and go out there and spread the word. So we've also expanded our services or our clientele sectors to include governments, schools, universities, malls, and we're even doing an automotive audit at the moment for solid waste for automotive industry to help them understand what kinds of waste they're producing, the volumes, and why it's happening, and then look at the streams and advise on how to reduce it or divert it from landfill by recycling.
Because ultimately it's a win-win. They're going to save money and resources, and we're doing what you say is looking after the earth as well. So everybody wins. It seems that they should be open to that.
They should be, and they're obviously initially always very open to it until you come down to the dollar sign, right?
Right, and the paperwork and the approvals and those things get buried, and I get it. So how can then the individual living anywhere, it doesn't have to be here, how can they reduce their food waste? And I want to ask you, because I saw a couple of articles that had you listing 6 ways to reduce food waste or 10 ways to reduce your personal waste, something like that. There were a few things written about you recently, right? They're pretty good. So what can a normal family of 4 or 5 do to reduce their waste when they don't have time, when the system is throw it in this bin and just forget about it? What can they do?
Well, if they really want to do something, you don't have to always be part of the system, firstly. Obviously, to some degree, we always are. I think to start to be conscious of what you generate is important. So when you go shopping, shop wisely, shop efficiently, buy what you need. If you're talking food waste specific, not just all waste streams, don't go shopping when you're hungry. You tend to buy more. And plan your meals. Stick to the plan. Go with a shopping list. Get creative with your leftovers. Try things you haven't done before. Eat your leftovers, right? If you're going to freeze them, take them out the freezer and cook with them or reheat them. Don't cook for the freezer and then freeze to the bin.
So I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm going to be a little devil's advocate. I have no time. It's either that or my kid falls off the counter and breaks her head. I got to grab her. I throw it out. It's garbage day. I just chuck everything out. I don't have a compost. I don't have time. I go and grab whatever's the closest thing at the supermarket, which is selling me crap, by the way. But I have no choice. I have no time. What can I do? I don't have time to plan this. What would you say to...
It's a choice, really, honestly. Do you not have time because you have a priority that's somewhere else, or do you need to make time? And how much time do you need, really, to plan your bin system, to go on the internet? How much time do we spend online, socially, in our lives? We could be finding a network around us of either people that do accept food if you want to donate, or people that will that do recycling, or bins available, or best practices, another home in the community, that is following it. It's a choice. If we want to recycle, if we want to make a difference, we will.
No, I agree with you that it is a choice, but don't you think part of it is systemic in that we are not given that option in many communities, especially in America, there's not an option.
But do we have to be given it, or do we have to create it?
It's a question.
Yeah.
I wonder where everybody's buying this. If there's no banana that's not wrapped in plastic in the supermarket where I go to, and I want bananas, okay, I can either choose now, either I don't get bananas or I buy the one with the bag.
Or you don't go to that supermarket.
What if it's the only one? What if it's the only one around? And these things do happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even an option for me to go to an organic supermarket that's close. I have to go to this one. I want bananas because they're healthy. They're in a plastic bag for some ridiculous reason. They have a natural cover, but let's not get into that. So what does that person do? They either say no bananas or bananas in plastic, Don't
you
think it's
forced
systemic
to buy
thing?
something in plastic, for argument's sake, if it's systemic, look at the next step then. The next best thing. Take that plastic and recycle it. Okay, if you can't recycle the cellophane, at least buy less of them, or there's always options. I think people like to fall back on the fact that, well, that's the way it is. That's the situation I'm in. I can't do anything about it. I don't ever look at it like that, so it's difficult for me to give you advice on what else to do other than seek another option. And in 2019, in the world we live in, we have options. Boundless options.
And I want to push you on a little bit on one thing, because I don't think recycling is the answer. Although,
No, of course not.
What are we going to do? Because recycling is generally, essentially a myth. You can't really recycle. When I'm speaking plastic specifically, you can't really recycle most plastic. I think it's 90% doesn't get recycled. It gets downcycled anyway to a lower grade. But that's another issue. But what I'm talking about is there needs to be a change, I think, from the top where we have this option, because I believe if people could buy the banana without the plastic, and not to beat this point down, or there was something right next to it for the same price, they would choose the one next to it for the same price that was better for the environment. But since they don't, I mean, more and more we're seeing these things pushed on our shelves that are, unsustainably wrapped, and we're forced to throw away more and more.
Yes, reduction is the answer.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. I think we have been forced, but we are at a point of change globally. Awareness is becoming, around plastic straws, for argument's sake. Right. Has reached, an all-time high. Last year in January, the end of January, beginning of February, was when the UAE joined the Stop Sucking movement, right? Can you clarify that? With Freedom Pizza and Azrak joining forces to launch the campaign in early Feb, which was a year ago. The entire UAE jumped on the bandwagon, which is a good thing, to reduce plastic straws. A lot of awareness, a lot of communication, a lot of initiatives are jumping up, spreading panel discussions, events around the reduction of single-use items. So I wouldn't say we're being forced more and more. I think we are getting more and more opportunities not to be forced. And like Spinneys has got these cotton reusable bags. That says something. We're not being forced. And I think it's because people are stepping up, are talking about it, are not satisfied with the status quo. More and more that critical mass is starting to be reached. And I've always been super, not even hopeful, but I wouldn't say just hopeful, very much inspired by the potential of what's happening.
That's a hopeful point. So, but you're generally now, I got onto plastic a bit because that's my thing, but you're more about the food waste, especially with Terra Loop, right? So what can an individual do to, let's say, home compost? Is there a simple solution for that?
There's quite a few. So obviously at some point you're always going to have excess food or trimmings, and you have a few choices depending on the size of home you have, or whether you have green fingers in a garden, or a villa and no garden, a studio and no garden, sorry, you can dehydrate your food with a very small machine called a smart Kara dehydrator, which dehydrates certain food waste between 3 or 4 hours. And that produces this dry soil amendment that can then turn into compost once you bury it in the soil. You can compost it with a home composting machine called an Auckland.
Sorry, how much would that dehydrator thing cost? Do you have any idea?
The 2 kilogram one is about 2,500 to 2,700 dirhams.
So we're looking at $600?
$700. Yeah.
Something like that? Okay. And the Auckland, you said?
Would be about 3,500, 3,800.
Okay.
But the Auckland's a composter and the Smart Car is a dehydrator. Although the Auckland doesn't produce what we know as humus compost, the real black soil. It produces, it's a first degree compost. So it decomposes the food using microorganisms and heat, agitation, but it still needs to undergo the second stage of composting.
So those are two pretty good options around $1,000.
Yeah,
there's a few others.
Bokashi, which is a fermentation process. It's a lot cheaper. There's I think 300 dirhams for a bokashi bin.
What's a bokashi bin?
Bokashi is like a dustbin. Well, bokashi itself is a Japanese term for fermentation, I think. And you get this bran that you sprinkle over the food waste every time you put it in the bin. The bran then pickles, ferments the food and releases the moisture, breaks down the cellular structure, releases the moisture, which falls through a sieve and you can tap it out. The bucket needs to be kept sealed, airtight, but it's an anaerobic process. You tap out the compost tea. It's not really compost, but super concentrated that you can either pour down the drain and clean your drains with it, or you can dilute and feed your plants.
That's awesome.
And then you bury the contents of the bucket. After a couple of weeks, it turns into compost.
Okay. So, but not everything can be composted, right? There's certain...
Ultimately, everything can be composted, but it depends on how you're composting it.
Okay.
Are you following the natural, traditional compost heat technique? Or are you following a heat agitation, microbacterial process that's sped up over 24 hours? It really depends. Do you have a grinder in the process? So can you add bones or not? It really depends.
But certain oils can't, right?
Oils I wouldn't put into the system, though.
That becomes an issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a really good option then for, this family who might be too busy. Just get one of those machines if they can afford it and they can create less food waste.
Yeah, so if you're too busy to segregate your recyclables into different streams, at least keep your organics out of that stream so that they don't mix. And if there's a manual recovery facility downstream, those dry recyclables will get sorted.
What are some other things you could recommend for reducing waste in general as individuals at home?
So many loads of options. I mean, simplify your life firstly, so that you don't have so many things distracting you, and get organized, right?
Yeah.
And then look at if you're living in a residential area with a waste collection or waste hauling company, see who they are, see if they do have a recycling option, right? In the community we live in, it's there's recycling bins on every third or fourth corner. So look out for them. Look at your supermarkets if there's a drop-off center, for argument's sake, where you can bring recyclables. We all go shopping, so take your recyclables with you, or there might be a school program or near your office. So if there's no recycling center at home or the haulage company doesn't have one, there is around, for sure.
We have this program, I think, that you helped facilitate, correct? The food waste in Ras Al Khaimah, the bags, the biodegradable bags?
Yeah, so the program we help facilitate is actually a food waste treatment center program. Yeah. But it's tied into the overall Ras Al Khaimah program, which is called Bag in the Bin, which is simply the separation of organics and recyclables.
Okay.
So we have the green bags for the dry recyclables, brown bags for the food waste.
Now, do those actually get recycled?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm skeptical. I just see everybody throwing their crap in the green bags, and I know it's not all, they're not separating it. And it gets all dumped down the chute. and I see them hauling away, and there's green bags and thing. I'm like, no, those are not supposed to go in there. And there's brown bags with.
It actually was designed to be simple, and that everything does go down that chute into that skip into that truck.
So they'll separate
then
it
at their sorting line. It's called an MRF, or manual recovery facility. The green and brown bags and other color bags, of course, all go down one long conveyor belt. A team of guys then pull off the green bags. They go into a separate line, which then they have a bag breaker. The bag breaker then opens up the bags onto another belt, and they pull out the recyclables. And obviously there's going to be some mixed content because varying degrees of care or understanding are always involved.
So if somebody put in organic waste into the green bag by, and it contaminated the cardboard or plastic.
Doesn't get recycled.
So it largely depends upon the individual to be diligent. Yeah. Correct? So that's something I find problematic as well.
Education and awareness.
We have to get these people to do it. I mean, I'm very diligent about my brown bag. It's organic, all organic waste, but I'm crazy about it. I don't know that everyone else, would be. And how do we get them to be aware, to take action on
Sensitization and awareness, and making them really appreciate the impact, the positive or negative impact they can have, but mostly the positive impact. I really feel the Doomsday Prophet kind of approach is not the way to go.
I know. I've been trying it for years. It doesn't work.
You need to make change accessible and inspirational and positive. Otherwise, why would people want to do it? All you're going to do is make people feel bad, and you got 50-50 chance of them going either way, right? But if you make them feel good, you've got a much better chance.
I think that's a great spot to end. And there's so much more we could talk about, but that's really the whole point. And thank you for that, because I tend to be the Doomsday Prophet. I actually had my family would hide their plasticware every time I came over, and out of fear, not even because I would do anything, but just because I would get so angry that they just didn't want to see me like that. But they weren't doing it because of any other reason than that. So I think you're right. It has to be inspirational. Change has to be, I liked how you said that. Change has to be inspirational and positive.
Accessible.
And, accessible.
I think sustainability needs to be accessible.
And it's guys like you who are making that happen. You've inspired me, you've inspired me to do this podcast too. We were talking about it. I know it's evolving into expats things, but thank you. Thank you for being the change. Thank you for being positive and doing this show. Is there anything else that you want to share about the direction Terra Loop is going, or anything you have exciting coming up in the future?
Yeah, well, no, firstly, thank you. It's a pleasure to be able to talk about this and share it, and be part of raising more awareness. So I really hope I'm sure the podcast will gain some traction and grow, and get some cool personalities on board that help to spread the word.
Get a word in with Branson.
Yeah, no, don't aim too high, no. At least to get.
I think he was on. Was it Tim Ferriss? Do you listen to Tim Ferriss? I think he was on Tim Ferriss. He rarely does these things, but it was pretty fascinating. Okay, so
Terra Loop, basically, to sum it up, we have been working for the last 3 years on developing a concept that does make sustainability accessible. Hotel solutions are one thing, but residential solutions, I feel, are at the core of change. We need to be able to live in communities that do offer us opportunities to contribute and change. So one of our new concepts, which not that new, I guess, but that we are busy launching, in the process of launching, is a zero waste hub, where people can come and learn about how to reduce their waste at home, whether it's food or plastic packaging or whatever it is, how to compost, how to grow food at home, be a little bit more independent, be inspired by learning the basics of urban farming, how to upcycle plastic into an item that's not single use. Not saying that you need to continue using plastic so that you can upcycle it, but provide a solution for the volume or the mass that there is currently, right? So these zero waste hubs, we're taking to communities, to schools, to any really location where there's people living. And there'll be upcycled shipping container hubs that are basically a destination to inspire and provide change.
So you want to do that here?
Mm-hmm.
So what makes you want to, as an expat now, back to the expat thing briefly, but what makes you want to establish something that's not in your home country? Is it the idea to expand it eventually? Or you just see opportunity here?
My home country, I was born and raised and inspired in South Africa. But we only have one planet. So regardless of where I'm living, that's where I will practice what I believe. But the UAE is this amazing melting pot of cultures. There's a lot of energy being put in here, a lot of investment, and it's a very ambitious vision. And to be in the energy flow of a country that has this vision amplifies and aligns with what I want to do is affect transformational change. And of course, expanding it out of the region is part of what we want to do into the Indian Ocean, for argument's sake, where waste is an issue on islands because islands are so small and a lot of pressure from tourism. Provide them with practical solutions to divert from landfill.
Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. I love the idea of the hubs. I love that, you brought it back to, it is just one earth, so it really doesn't matter. Just do what you believe where you are. And again, you're doing that.
Yeah, I think, so before we sign off, the
Tell
one
me.
program which we have is Zero Waste Education or Zero Waste Ed that we've launched with a school now in Dubai, where we're guiding the students to form a committee of Zero Waste Heroes. These 7 Zero Waste Heroes will be sensitized and empowered to measure their own food waste, track it, reduce it, come up with solutions for the reduction, compost their own food waste, but not try and make as much compost as possible, but actually just enough for growing, but keep track of their food waste. So they set them their own, let's say, benchmark of how much waste is acceptable, and then teach them how to grow their own herbs and veggies in their school, so they can really reconnect with food and the soil, have fun doing it, and then affect change within their entire school and their residential community connected with the school. So we're super excited. It's been a year and a half in the making, and so we've launched in Clarion School in Dubai.
So just that one school so far?
For now, yeah.
Do you have plans to go to public schools?
For sure.
Okay.
I think it's very powerful to go to public schools if we can get a bigger program rolled out. But we are very focused on walking the talk and proof of concept before we go big.
So it's a pilot, essentially, right? And if people want to get involved with that, where do they go?
TerraLoop.life, or email me, Ryan at TerraLoop.life.
You're going to have a lot of emails.
Hopefully.
So I'll link all that stuff when we do show notes. And it may come out in a couple of weeks. But the zero waste, that is great, man. It's kind of like a green school Bali model, sounds like.
Well,
Similar?
it's a program. It's not the whole school, right? But yes, when you model it around empowering students, yes, that's basically what Green School Bali is making them aware and empowering them outside of the status quo. So we use a normal school, but within the school we run a program that helps them rethink, right? And react.
Yeah. I think that growing your own food is an important piece too. Because it's not just about where you dispose of the stuff. It's about how long it actually takes.
The resources involved.
Right.
It gives them that appreciation for the process.
And how long.
That's part of what we actually start off the introduction with a short section on the journey of food with the students. We really help them understand where does our food come from, especially in this country where 80 to 90% is imported.
Right.
And what went into growing it, transporting it, distributing it, preparing it.
Yeah.
And then how much waste does get generated. So we really bring them up to speed with the issue. But zero waste, it isn't just about food waste. It's also about other waste streams. And it's about guiding them away from the disposable nature we're all prone to fall into.
I think it's great to teach, to educate them young. And again, thank you for being the anti-Doomsday prophet. And really, solution.
Everybody needs a nemesis now. DC Comics.
I know. I'm trying to change, man. I just get stuck on Instagram with all this doomsday stuff sometimes, and I just get depressed. It's like, it's too much. It's too much. You see these pictures with these dolphins wearing like plastic bags for necklaces, and it just breaks my heart. Yeah, I think we have a lot to talk about, so maybe we could have a round 2 sometime when you get Zero Waste Ed up and running.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd love that.
When we get this out and get more people involved. So thanks.
Great. My pleasure, Derek. Thanks for coming through.
Ryan Ingram, Terra Loop Life. Thank you.